Well, Mr. Williams, countries including China, Russia, and others, South Africa also, have also...
Yes, Blanche, I'm not hearing you too well, but I think you're asking about the various countries, including China, Russia, the nuclear powers, South Africa, Namibia, and so forth, that have condemned the action by the United States. And what could the United Nations actually do? Well, one level is the condemnation, which is welcome. Without a doubt, we can say that. But there are things the United Nations can do when you have a threat like you have right now with a permanent vetoing wielding member, which is the largest military force in the world, when they decide to do something that is an act of aggression and threatens the peace of the world. There's something called Uniting for Peace resolution. And the Uniting for Peace resolution was adopted in 1950. And what it does is that it allows, if in case the Security Council, there's no agreement in the Security Council, or it's not able to exercise its responsibility to maintain the peace of the world, security in the world, and there's a threat, it can actually, the General Assembly can actually consider a matter to make appropriate recommendations to act against that aggression. And it just requires a vote of any 7 members of the Security Council, and then as well as a majority number of countries being able to the majority of councils in the United Nations. And that allows it to go around the Security Council. And we would hope, though, that it does not stop at condemnation, but it goes further than that, to mandate the United Nations to ignore the veto power of the United States and to get them to bring into order a president which has seemingly gone rogue. A president of the United States has become a threat to world peace. I hope you were able to get that, Blanche.
Yes, Mr. Williams, particularly now that the Secretary General has also described the situation as setting a dangerous precedent that could lead to other countries following suit and use the reasons that the U.S. has used to justify their actions. Now, Mr. Williams, President Trump has also stated that U.S. will take over the administration of Venezuela until such a time that a handover could take place, setting aside that country's laws. What do you make of those declarations?
Ourselves, like South Africans and Namibians, we know colonialism when we see it. This is pure, naked aggression and colonial and imperialist action by the United States. I think we must be clear, we are disappointed with the supposed custodians of political power in the case of Western Europe, countries like the United Kingdom or Great Britain, countries like Germany and so forth, who are suspiciously too quiet, sending in fitting statements, like really statements that do not move the needle. They have already condemned President Maduro as being illegitimate. They have said he's corrupt and so forth, with no any evidence, so as to justify the action by the United States president, who has gone, in my opinion, rogue, as I said. So what it does, what it says, that you as a Western power and the leader of the West can get up one day and then decide that this country, you can take over its administration. The United States is not even in the country, and they are saying they will choose who will run Venezuela. But before that will happen, before that transition will happen, they will be in charge. That is pure naked colonialism. It should never be tolerated, not in 2025. It was done, in our continent. We're still experiencing the ravages and the consequences of colonialism. And now today, the United States is able to say that, and Western powers are talking about President Maduro as if he was a despot, as if that country was corrupt, with no evidence. It's because they could not control the country. And as well as that you have a naked act to say that we will control the oil fields. because that is our oil fields, as President Trump has said. So, this is quite worrying. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. Venezuela, at the same time, though, is following their constitution and laws, and have already appointed the Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as the acting president, and they've done that through the courts and so forth. They are following the law. President Trump and the United States has not followed the law. He had got no approval by his Congress to take this action, and therefore he should be regarded as rogue and as a threat to world peace.
As Namibia and South Africa, you correctly stated that we know colonialism when we see it. Now, Mr. Williams, the message that all of this is sending across the region, that is now Latin America as well as the Caribbean region, starting from the build-up all the way to the events of Saturday, what do you think would be the best going forward for the regional, for the countries in the region to exercise vigilance?
We must remind Europe that they have termed so many different people as the second coming of Adolf Hitler. They talked about Saddam Hussein in that way. They recently talk about Vladimir Putin in that way. However, what will they do when they have a Hitler in the becoming, like what is occurring with the United States president, when he has decided that he will expand his country where he deems it fit? And this is exactly how Hitler operated. And they should then say how they should be dealt with. So as countries in Africa, we need the African Union, and our Peace and Security Council must meet as quickly as possible. They must be able to issue statements, not just as individual countries, but as African countries as a whole. And as I said right at the beginning, they must get the United Nations to call an emergency assembly, General Assembly, because the Security Council is not able to stop a threat to world peace, to threat to security, to global security, and that threat is the United States President Donald Trump. Secondly, they must call on the Congress of the United States to impeach Trump. He must be impeached. The Senate to hold a trial that is presided over by the Supreme Court, so he is removed as president because their president has gone rogue. South Africa, Namibia, Egypt, Nigeria, Senegal, every single member state of the African Union must make that call that Donald Trump should be removed because he's a threat to world peace, unless the United States agrees with his actions and says that they can enter any country if they deem that country a threat to them, even if that country has not done anything, even if that country, the people have not broken the laws in that country, and they can act. Therefore, for us to be vigilant, we must make certain that all countries push for the removal of Donald Trump as the United States president. And if the United States does not do that, then they must go around the United States and remove it from the United Nations, even for that matter.
Now, Mr. Williams, you briefly touched on the power or the control of the resources. We've repeatedly heard statements from the U.S. and its allies about the control of resources, in this case, the vast mineral resources of Venezuela, and then looking at the candidates or the persons that the names of persons being flouted that is now to be put in power in Venezuela after U.S. governs it or runs it, in the words of President Trump. What would you say that says about the governance that even Venezuelans themselves have been talking about, the self-governance aspect?
Exactly. There's not going to be any real self-governance until the United States is certain, even if they get a president that's appointed by the U.S., that will be a puppet president. Venezuelans won't have democracy with the United States in charge of it. Trump has been clear in that regard. In his conference of yesterday, he was clear that they will create, before the transition, they will first make certain they resuscitate the oil industry and build infrastructure and so forth so that they can control that oil. They will make certain they will exploit that country and suck it dry, and then only they can possibly give it to Venezuelans. And if they have a caretaker president, it will be a caretaker president that will be reporting to the United States. They've done it to countries like Haiti. They've done it elsewhere. And we know when countries are controlled by the West, what happens to them. And so therefore, Venezuela needs all our support, because what has happened to them can happen to any other country. The United States is not just simply flexing its military capability. They are basically pushing the world to allow themselves to be in charge of the entire world, and no country it can be safe in that regard.
And just finally, Mr. Williams, looking at the charges on which President Maduro has been captured, that of narco-terrorism and others, do those charges stand?
Firstly, President Maduro is not a citizen of the United States. He's a citizen of Venezuela. He's broken no laws in Venezuela. Why should he be charged by American laws? And then there has been no evidence or proof of President Maduro being a drug dealer or the state of Venezuela being part of distributing drugs to the United States. There are criminals maybe doing that, but it's not on the wide scale. Even the United States' own information shows that less than 5%, as a poultry number, I think of like even 1% of supposed fentanyl on that comes from the United States, comes from Venezuela. More than that, they have provided no evidence. They've now suddenly included his wife under the charge of narco-terrorism as well. These are all made-up matters. The United States has now become what they would like to call others a banana republic. And if their judiciary continues with it's a judiciary that is not just independent, it's a judiciary that doesn't execute their own laws and their ideas of justice. President Maduro needs all the support he can get. And unless the United States people, through their Congress and the actual judiciary, the Supreme Court, resolve this matter, I suspect that him and his wife will remain in the American prisons until they're either very, very old or until their death. And because the United States, under Trump and whoever else, will not release him unless they are forced to.